Hi there, and welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. Today I want to talk about one of my most anticipated releases for 2024, which is Robert Jackson Bennett's The Tainted Cup. So, what happens when you combine Sherlock Holmes with a little bit of Attack on Titan, a little bit of Jeff Vandermeer, a little bit of Lovecraft, and you take those raw ingredients and you put them in the hands of a master author like RJB is. Apparently you get something like The Tainted Cup. So what is The Tainted Cup about? Let's just say it's not another day in the office for the local ILX when a high-ranking visitor in their jurisdiction is murdered. And murdered in a pretty extreme, pretty flashy way. They were murdered by making a tree grow out of their body, which pretty much sets the tone for the kind of stuff you can expect in this novel. But then it turns out that this murder is just the tip of the iceberg, and far from being an isolated incident, it actually had a direct ramification on the Empire's ability to withstand the attack of these colossal titans, leviathans, that like attack the walls every time the rains fall. So to get to the bottom of this murder becomes an extremely high priority. Needless to say, it also becomes a race against time because given what happened as a result of this one murder, what would happen if something like this occurs again? But yeah, Robert Jackson Bennett is frankly one of my favorite authors. The Divine Cities trilogy was pretty radical. And I realized reading those books that he's one of those rare authors who can take pretty much anything and put together a really good story out of it. The Tainted Cup is a perfect example of this. It's not a very complicated story, it's not a over-the-top one. Even just considering the title, it kind of spoils a big part of the story, a big part of the reveal, I should say, which is unfortunate. They probably could have picked a better title, but it is what it is. But even that doesn't really detract from the fact that this was a pretty interesting story to read from start to finish. It doesn't detract from it in any way, I should say. Well, it didn't detract from it in any way, for me at least. So this is, first of all, I should also mention that this is the first of an all-new series. One of the things that I keep hearing about it is that, oh, it's Lovecraftian. For me, it felt more influenced by Jeff Vandermeer in terms of like the ecological horror element is much more pronounced than like a cosmic horror element. So far, at least, we will only just being introduced to this brand new world of Daritana. Who knows what lies in store? And then there is the fact of the Leviathans themselves. Let's see what's gonna happen there. But yeah, for me, it's more influenced by Jeff Vandermeer than Lovecraft, and not just in terms of the ecological horror sense. It's in terms of the body modification that's become an integral part of society, that's tied very much into the ecological the ecological phantasmagoria that's just a part of this book. People to gain abilities, to gain powers, people do something involving these the odd flora and fauna of this world, and it's a trade-off. They gain skills, but these skills also come with bigger detractors. And one thing I did like about how this entire thing is portrayed is that throughout the book we see, oh, it's done for the greater good, it's done for it's done to improve society, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But when you really drill down to it and you look at the people who underwent these modifications on a case by case basis, they really only did it to further their own financial status, the quality of life for themselves and their family. There's no like epic or patriotic sense of duty behind their choice. Then I felt that was like a really good distinction to make about why people choose to undergo this. Another interesting thing I found about this book, and it's directly related to people saying, oh, you know, Sherlock Holmes, whatever, is the fact that the majority of the story, the majority of the mystery is investigated and explored, and the revelations occur at the hands of the psychic, the like RJB's Watson stand-in, and his quote-unquote Sherlock stand-in, the chief detective, really only steps in at key moments to kind of combine the elements of what we previously discovered, what we previously saw as a reader, with some arcane bit of knowledge that's introduced in order to further the plot. This is one of those mystery novels that I see happen quite commonly in fantasy, where the reader can't figure out the mystery, largely because they're never given the full picture. We're completely reliant on the pseudo Sherlock to understand what happened and get to the bottom of this, which is fine. It's like, if you can't figure it out, you're forced to read the entire thing to find out how it ends, right? Especially if you're hooked. It is what it is. But the point I initially set out to make is that I see the comparison to Sherlock Holmes bandied out quite a bit, but for me personally, having read all the Sherlock Holmes stories, I think a better comparison would be Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's brother, who is much smarter than Sherlock, and who has been portrayed in Arthur Conan Doyle's stories as being able to piece together mysteries and solve things and decipher conundrums from his armchair, hanging out in his parlour with information that's brought to him. He, unlike his less accomplished brother Sherlock, he doesn't have to resort to walking among the masses and and attending to scenes and doing like drudge work like a degenerate. So yeah, the chief detective, the lead detective in this dynamic duo pair, reminds me more of Mycroft than Sherlock. But yeah, that's just me picking threads. Being what is it? Picking that's just me nitpicking, I guess you can say. But yeah, as for the fantastical element of to this book, it's aplenty. I really like how it's handled. It's definitely more on the fantasy horror side of the spectrum, as opposed to like the weird and wonderful and magical. It's not pretty. It's really not pretty. Like I said, Lovecraft is a name that will probably get thrown around quite a bit when people discuss this novel. But for me, it's more Vandermeer. Like, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on this. But yeah, maybe people talk about Lovecraft because it's better from a marketing perspective. I don't know. Would be interested to hear your thoughts on that actually in the comment section, if anyone ever makes it this far and sees this. End of the day, I have to say it all just goes to show how much there is about this book that can just be unpacked and discussed. It's easily a book that when you can read a second time and just get a much deeper understanding, a much fresher perspective on. RJB is just that kind of author. Like, he always has something fascinating to say, even if he chooses like the most pedestrian of elements, he can craft a really good story out of it. So for him to pick this kind of stuff and come up with the makings of what's setting up to be a pretty interesting trilogy, I have to say that, yeah, he really pulled this off. I really enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't quite like is the fact that we're never given the full picture, so we couldn't figure it. We couldn't figure out the larger parts of the mystery for ourselves. A few things here and there, yeah, sure, but not enough. Not enough by far. But yeah, I had a blast reading this. We have two interesting main characters to follow in the form of his stand-ins for Sherlock and Watson. And to say I'll be picking up the other two books on the release date is pretty much a given. Yeah. So who do I recommend this for? I recommend this to fans of like interesting fantasy, murder mysteries. If you dig the whole ecological fantasy horror kind of thing, this book will have your vibes. But yeah, like frankly, Robert Jackson Bennett's books they're just fun to read. They're just really interesting to read. He always does some fascinating things, and this is no different. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check this out. And if you've made it to this point of the video, thank you very much for watching, and happy reading.